In June 1967, the Middle East erupted in one of the most stunning military campaigns in modern history. In just 6 days, Israel shattered 3 Arab armies, captured vast territories, and reshaped the geopolitical map of the region. It was a war so fast, so decisive, that it seemed almost unreal. But beneath the speed lay years of tension, miscalculations, and fateful decisions that set the stage for an explosion. To understand the 6-day war, we must first go back to a time of simmering hostility. In the aftermath of Israel's creation in 1948, Arab nations refused to recognize the new state. Border skirmishes, Fedayeen raids, and cycles of retaliation became routine. By the mid-1960s, Egypt, under President Gamal Abdel Nasser, had emerged as the symbol of Arab nationalism and defiance. His fiery speeches promised the liberation of Palestine and the destruction of Israel. In Tel Aviv, those words were not rhetoric, they were existential threats. The tension escalated in May 1967. Egypt expelled the United Nations emergency force that had kept peace in the Sinai since 1956. Nasser then closed the Straits of Tiran, cutting off Israel's access to the Red Sea and crippling its trade. For Israel, this was an act of war. At the same time, Jordan and Syria joined Egypt in a military alliance, moving troops and tanks to Israel's borders. Arab radio declared that the armies of the Arab world were ready to crush Israel once and for all. Inside Israel, the mood was grim but determined. Surrounded and outnumbered, the nation mobilized every reservist it had. Its survival depended on a single idea: strike first, strike hard, and win fast. The morning of June 5, 1967, would decide the fate of the Middle East. At 7:45 a.m., Israel launched Operation Focus. In a masterstroke of planning and precision, nearly every Israeli combat aircraft took off, flying low over the Mediterranean to avoid radar. Minutes later, they swept into Egyptian airspace. In less than 3 hours, the Egyptian Air Force, considered one of the strongest in the Arab world, was annihilated on the ground. Runways were cratered, hangars destroyed, and hundreds of aircraft reduced to burning wreckage. When the sun rose over Cairo that day, Egypt's skies belonged to Israel. With air supremacy achieved, Israel unleashed its ground forces across the Sinai Peninsula. Tank divisions surged forward, bypassing Egyptian strongholds and cutting deep behind enemy lines. By nightfall, the desert was littered with the wrecks of hundreds of Egyptian vehicles. Communication collapsed. Entire Egyptian units fled in panic toward the Suez Canal. In less than 48 hours, Israel had effectively destroyed Egypt's ability to wage war. But the war was not over. On June 6th, Jordan entered the conflict, shelling Jerusalem and attacking Israeli positions in the West Bank. Israel responded swiftly. The Israel Defense Forces counterattacked, breaking through Jordanian lines and advancing toward the Old City of Jerusalem. For the first time since 1948, Jewish soldiers stood before the ancient walls of the city. The battle was fierce, street-to-street fighting, sniper fire, and desperate resistance. On June 7th, the Temple Mount fell to Israeli troops. In one of the most symbolic moments of the century, Israeli paratroopers raised their flag over the Western Wall. Jerusalem, divided for 19 years, was reunited under Israeli control. Meanwhile, on the northern front, Syria rained artillery fire from the Golan Heights, threatening Israeli towns below. On June 9th, Israel launched a daring assault up the steep escarpments. Fighting uphill against entrenched Syrian positions, Israeli soldiers advanced under heavy fire. By June 10th, the Golan Heights were captured. The war was over. In 6 days, Israel had captured the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights. Its territory had tripled in size. Its enemies were stunned, its allies amazed. and the world forever changed. The victory transformed Israel's strategic position, but it also planted the seeds of future conflict. The occupation of Arab lands created a new and volatile reality. Palestinians came under Israeli rule, and questions about sovereignty and borders grew more complex. Arab leaders vowed revenge, setting the stage for the Yom Kippur War 6 years later. At the same time, Israel's triumph shifted global alliances. The United States, seeing Israel as a strategic asset against Soviet-backed Arab regimes, deepened its support. Moscow, furious at the defeat of its allies, rearmed Egypt and Syria. The Cold War had come to the Middle East. Behind the headlines, the Six-Day War was more than a clash of armies. It was a collision of ideologies. For Israel, it was a war of survival, a validation of unity, preparation, and resolve. For the Arab world, it was a humiliation, a moment that shattered the dream of pan-Arab victory. For the rest of the world, it was a lesson in how modern warfare, driven by intelligence, air power, and speed, could redefine nations in a matter of days. The legacy of those 6 days still echoes across the Middle East today. Every border, every negotiation, every peace treaty since 1967 traces its roots back to that week of war. The West Bank and Gaza remain flashpoints. Jerusalem's status continues to divide nations and faiths. The Golan Heights remains disputed territory. Half a century later, the Six-Day War is not just history. It is the foundation of the modern Middle East. A war fought in less than a week, yet its consequences still shape the destiny of millions.